You felt it again, didn't you? That moment when you glanced at your phone and saw 11:11, or when your coffee came to exactly $3.33, or when you woke up at 4:44 for the third time this week, with no alarm, no reason, except something deeper calling you awake. There's a tremor in your chest when it happens, a recognition, like remembering a language you once spoke fluently, but forgot you ever knew. They've taught you to call it coincidence, random, meaningless noise in a chaotic world. But right now, in this moment, something ancient within you is stirring. Something that remembers what you've forgotten. You're here because the numbers found you, and they didn't find you by accident. Let me paint a picture that might feel familiar. You're living your life, going through the motions, when suddenly, patterns begin emerging from the static. 11:11 on every clock you pass. License plates that spell out sequences that make your heart skip. Receipt totals that seem impossibly intentional. Birth dates, addresses, timestamps, all speaking the same numerical language. And when you mention it to others, they smile politely. Confirmation bias, they say. You're just noticing them now that you're looking. But deep down, you know better. There's an intelligence behind these patterns, a conversation happening in a language older than words. Yet everywhere you turn, the modern world insists it's all random, meaningless, and you're seeing patterns where none exist. So you find yourself caught between two worlds. The logical mind that says, it's just coincidence, and the deeper knowing that whispers, this means something. You're not going crazy. You're waking up. Do you remember what it was like to be a child? Before the world taught you how to think, how to dismiss, how to explain away the magic that once felt so real. Children see patterns everywhere. They feel the pulse of synchronicity as naturally as breathing. A 4-year-old notices that their birthday shares numbers with their best friend's address and declares it meant to be, and they're not wrong. They're simply accessing a way of knowing that education hasn't yet schooled out of them. But then came the conditioning. Don't be silly. That's just coincidence. Think logically. There's no scientific proof. Slowly, layer by layer, your natural awareness was painted over with skepticism and doubt. Your teachers meant well. Society meant well. They were preparing you for a world that had forgotten its own language, the language of signs, symbols, and synchronicity. But here's what they didn't tell you. That awareness was never destroyed. It was simply buried. And now, when you see those numbers, when you feel that electric recognition, it's not a malfunction of your brain. It's a memory coming back to life. Let me tell you about Sarah. For 3 months, every time she felt doubt about leaving her toxic job, she'd see 222 on clocks, receipts, mile markers. Always when the fear crept in, always when she needed reassurance. The morning she finally submitted her resignation letter, she drove past a billboard advertisement. The phone number ended in 222. Later that day, her new employer called to offer her the dream position she'd applied for weeks earlier. The call came at 2:22 p.m. Then there's Michael. After his father's death, he started seeing 717 everywhere. His father's birthday, July 17th. It appeared when he was making difficult decisions, when he missed his father most, when he needed guidance. Each appearance felt like a gentle hand on his shoulder, a reminder that love transcends the physical realm. These aren't isolated incidents. They're not delusions or desperate minds seeking meaning in chaos. They're part of a larger conversation that's been happening since humanity first looked up at the stars and wondered if we're alone. Have you had a moment like this? A time when the numbers seem to be speaking directly to you, arriving precisely when you needed them most? If you have, you're not imagining it. You're remembering. For thousands of years, the wise ones have known what modern society has forgotten. Numbers are not mere quantities. They are frequencies, vibrations, carriers of meaning that transcend their mathematical function. Pythagoras, the father of sacred geometry, taught that all is number. He understood that numbers were the fundamental language through which divine consciousness expresses itself in physical reality. In the Kabbalah, each number carries specific spiritual significance. 1 represents unity and new beginnings. 2 embodies balance and partnership. 3 speaks to creativity and manifestation. These aren't arbitrary assignments. They're encoded wisdom passed down through millennia of mystic understanding. The ancient Hermetic text, the Kabbalion, tells us, as above, so below. The patterns that govern the cosmos also govern your personal experience. When you see repeating numbers, you're witnessing this principle in action. The macrocosm speaking to the microcosm. The universal consciousness reaching out to individual awareness. Let's decode some of these numerical frequencies. 111, the portal of awakening. When you see this, pay attention to your thoughts. You're in a moment of powerful manifestation. 222, balance and partnership. Trust the process. What you've set in motion is finding its equilibrium. 333, the trinity of mind, body, and spirit aligning. Creative forces are flowing through you. 444, stability and foundation. You're being supported even when you can't see it. 555, change is coming. Release resistance and flow with transformation. These meanings aren't superstition. They're frequencies of information that your consciousness is naturally attuned to recognize when you're open to receiving them. Now, the modern mind might ask, isn't there a simpler explanation? Doesn't science account for this? And yes, there is something called the reticular activating system, the RAS. It's the part of your brain that filters information, determining what deserves your conscious attention. When you buy a red car, you suddenly notice red cars everywhere. The RAS is working. But here's where it gets interesting. The RAS doesn't just filter randomly. It filters based on what's important to you, what you focus on, what resonates with your current frequency. So when you start seeing repeating numbers, yes, your RAS is involved. But the question isn't whether you're noticing them more. It's why these particular patterns are becoming important to you at this particular time. Your subconscious mind is infinitely more aware than your conscious mind. It picks up subtle environmental cues, emotional patterns, energetic shifts that your logical brain hasn't yet registered. When repeating numbers appear, it's often because your deeper awareness is trying to communicate something your surface mind needs to know. The mechanism may be neurological, but the intelligence behind it is something far more profound. Your brain is simply the radio, tuning into a frequency that was always broadcasting. So why now? Why are these numbers appearing in your life with such persistence? Because you're at a threshold, a moment of decision, a point of transformation where the path splits and you must choose which direction to walk. Repeating numbers are not passive phenomena. They're active communications, nudges from the intelligence that guides all things, appearing precisely when you need guidance most. Sometimes they come as confirmations. You've been wondering if you're on the right path, and suddenly 111 appears everywhere, telling you, yes, keep going, you're aligned. Sometimes they come as warnings. You've been ignoring your intuition, pushing against the flow, and 555 keeps appearing, whispering, change is needed, stop resisting. Sometimes they come as wake-up calls. You've been sleepwalking through your life, and 444 arrives like a gentle shake of the shoulder. Wake up, pay attention. You're supported, but you must engage. Think about when you first started noticing these patterns. What was happening in your life? What questions were you asking? What decisions were weighing on your heart? The numbers didn't randomly decide to visit you. They arrived because you sent out a signal, consciously or unconsciously, that you were ready to receive guidance. But here's the crucial part. They're not here to think for you. They're here to remind you that you're not alone in your journey, that there's an intelligence weaving through your experience, offering breadcrumbs when you're lost in the forest. The ancient oracles knew something modern fortune tellers have forgotten. The meaning of a sign is not in the symbol itself, but in the conversation between the symbol and the soul that receives it. When you see repeating numbers, don't immediately run to a numerology website. Instead, stop, breathe. Ask yourself, what was I just thinking about when this number appeared? What question has been on my mind? What am I uncertain about in my life right now? What does my intuition whisper when I see this pattern? The numbers are mirrors. They reflect back the energy you're putting out, the frequency you're vibrating at, the answers that are already within you, but haven't yet surfaced to conscious awareness. Start a synchronicity journal, not to obsess over every coincidence, but to track the patterns. Write down the number, the time, what you were thinking, what you were feeling. Over time, you'll begin to see the conversation that's been happening. You might notice that 1111 always appears when you're doubting yourself, as if reminding you to make a wish, to remember your power. Or that 333 shows up when you're being too serious, calling you back to creativity and play. The symbolic frameworks exist: angel numbers, numerology, sacred geometry, but use them as starting points, not end points. The most powerful interpretation is always the one that resonates in your bones. That makes something inside you say, yes, that's it. Trust that inner knowing. It's been waiting lifetimes for you to listen. Here's where it gets truly magical. When you start acknowledging these signs, When you begin trusting the guidance they offer, something extraordinary happens. They multiply. Not because you're looking for them more, but because you've opened a channel of communication. You've demonstrated that you're listening, that you're receptive, that you're willing to participate in the conversation between seen and unseen worlds. The universe operates on a feedback loop. When you notice and honor the signs, more signs appear. When you act on the guidance, clearer guidance emerges. When you align with the flow carries you toward destinations your logical mind never could have imagined. But this requires something our culture struggles with: trust without proof, faith before evidence, moving forward based on inner knowing rather than external validation. This doesn't mean becoming passive or dependent on signs. It means developing the delicate art of receptivity while maintaining your agency, of listening deeply while acting decisively, of honoring the guidance while taking responsibility for your choices. The numbers don't make decisions for you. They simply remind you that you're not making those decisions alone. High vibration looks like curiosity, gratitude, and trust. It looks like saying thank you for the guidance rather than give me more proof. It looks like love instead of fear, wonder instead of doubt. When you vibrate at this frequency, synchronicity becomes as natural as breathing. But let me warn you about the traps that many fall into on this path. The first mistake: noticing the signs but ignoring them. You see 111 and think, how interesting. Then go back to scrolling your phone. You receive the message, but don't respond to the conversation. The signs aren't entertainment. They're invitations. Ignoring them is like being called by name and pretending you don't hear. The second mistake: seeking more proof instead of acting on what you've already received. If this is real, show me another sign. If this means something, make it clearer. You turn the dialogue into a demand, the relationship into a test. Divine intelligence doesn't perform on command. It offers guidance, not proof. Faith, not certainty. When you've received clear guidance multiple times and still ask for more evidence, you're operating from fear, not trust. The third mistake: becoming dependent on signs instead of developing your inner guidance. You won't make a decision without seeing 111. You can't take action without 333. You've replaced your intuition with external validation. The purpose of synchronicity is not to create dependency, but to awaken the wisdom that already lives within you. The numbers are training wheels, helping you remember how to balance on the bicycle of intuition. Eventually, you won't need the numbers as much because you'll have developed direct access to the guidance they were pointing toward all along. So let me offer you a reframe that might change everything. Synchronicities are not just about guidance. They're about transformation. Every time you notice a meaningful pattern, you're being reminded that reality is not the random, mechanical universe you were taught to believe in. Reality is interactive, conscious, responsive. Your attention shapes what appears in your experience. Your beliefs influence what possibilities emerge. Your energy affects the quality of synchronicities that find you. This means you are not a passive observer of a predetermined universe. You are an active participant in a living, breathing, conscious reality that responds to your awareness, your intentions, your vibration. The numbers are not fortune cookies dispensing wisdom from some external source. They are evidence of the conversation that's always happening between your consciousness and the larger consciousness of which you're a part. When you act on synchronicity, reality reorganizes itself around your choice. Doors open, people appear, opportunities align, not because you're being rewarded for good behavior, but because you've demonstrated your willingness to dance with the intelligence that moves through all things. When you doubt, when you dismiss, when you explain away the magic, the conversation becomes quieter. Not because you're being punished, but because you've tuned your radio to a different frequency. The universe speaks in whispers to those who listen. It speaks louder to those who act. And sometimes, when we've ignored the whispers for too long, it has to roar. Don't wait for the roar. So here's your invitation, delivered through the very synchronicity that brought you to this moment. Start listening, really listening. Keep that journal, not as a collector of coincidences, but as a record of a conversation. Write down what you were thinking when the numbers appeared. Notice the patterns. Honor the guidance. Set intentions, but hold them lightly. Ask for signs, but don't demand them. Open your awareness to the magic that's always been there, waiting for you to remember. When 11:11 appears on your clock tonight, don't just wish. Listen. What is your soul trying to tell you? What guidance is trying to emerge? When you see 333 on your receipt tomorrow, pause. What creative energy wants to flow through you? What part of you is ready to be expressed? When 444 shows up in your life, feel the support that's always there. The invisible foundation that holds you even when you can't see it. You are not separate from the intelligence that moves the stars and grows the flowers. You are an expression of it, a focal point through which it experiences itself. The numbers that find you are love letters from the cosmos to itself, reminders of the connection that was never broken, only forgotten. These numbers didn't find you by chance. They found you because you're ready. Ready to remember who you really are. Ready to step back into the conversation. Ready to live in alignment with the magic that is your birthright. The question is not whether synchronicity is real. The question is, what will you do with it now that you remember?